a very warm welcome to our very special guest and dear friend, Sis Makaziwe Mandela, or Dr Makaziwe Mandela, as you would know her. We have many distinguished guests here today that have joined us, and it is not something that I want to spend too much time on, but I want to also just welcome, first of all, my mother, who's here, and it's always wonderful to have her in these special occasions. Of course, my wife and my family, my sisters, all of them are here. But Judge Desai, wonderful to see him today. I should call you Dr. Alan Busak. I'll never know it's Reverend Dr. Alan Busak or just Dr. Alan Busak is also over here. And we have Consul General Malenko. I know we have a few other Consul Generals that are coming as well. They might be a little bit late. And of course, many of you are very good friends. Oh, Consul, I see you over there. I couldn't see everyone else here, but I'm sure I'll see you just now. But this is a very casual event. It's not meant to be something very formal. So let me just start off with that little bit of a caveat. Secondly, the little bit of a brief discussion that we're going to have is going to be just that, very brief. Because the main part of it is that Dr. Makaziwe Mandela is going to sign her book, which has just come back last night from New York. So she is super exhausted. You can imagine. She texted me, I think, at 7 p.m. last night to say, I've just landed. And I wasn't sure it was Cape Town or Johannesburg, but it was Johannesburg. And she flew in early this morning, so she is severely jet-lagged. She told me she delivered, one of the commemorative speeches at NYU, and the book was launched in New York and was really well received. So you're one of the first few to get copies of this book. And I think what's very nice is Dr. Mandela has, agreed to sign to each of you personally. Now, I know some of you will be very puzzled. Why is it under the Omar Khayyám Club? So I'll just spend 2 or 3 minutes telling you about that. So what had initially happened is that I was actually just asking Dr. Mandela to come down and have some books signed for my family office and a few of the executives in Cape Town and Sekundjalo in the group itself. It was meant to be just that. And then we said, okay, let's extend it to a few more friends, which is how we came about where we're here today. And then we said, you know what, next year we are launching officially the Omar Khayyám Club. Now, for those of you who don't know Omar Khayyám, I'm sure you've seen the videos that were up here. Omar Khayyám was a very famous poet in the 12th century. He was a mathematician, was an astronomer, he was a mystic, and he wrote famously the Rubaiyat. Very famous. Now, what some of you don't know, and you can Google this, the Rubaiyat is one of the most published books of all time. Just second to maybe, the religious books. So, and during the late 19th century, Fitzgerald, who translated the Rubaiyat, it's very simple, it's quatrains. If you haven't read the Rubaiyat, I really suggest you read it. The Rubaiyat is quatrains. Omar Khayyám, when he wrote it, every quatrain has a specific meaning to it. And so in the 19th century, there were clubs particularly in London, where they discussed, sometimes for the whole evening and night, what the meaning of each quatrain was. And of course, in so doing, they drank lots of wine and had lots of good food. And so those clubs went throughout the world, the Omar Khayyám Club, and then they stopped about a few decades ago. This is no association to any other Omar Khayyám Club. I've just started it on my own again because I love Omar Khayyám so much. And I read his poetry a lot, and and I was influenced by his thinking from a very early young age when I read the Bayat for the first time. So the club itself is going to be a monthly get-together. It's not going to be in this format. It's going to be a dinner. And we're going to invite anyone from whatever background, 10 people at a time, that has done something extraordinary in South Africa. Whether you're a writer, an artist, an academic, a novelist, an astronomer, a scientist, a doctor, anything that you've done extraordinary, we'll invite you to come, different people every month, 10 people at a time, and speak for 3 minutes about what you've done. And then you rotate to each table. That's the format. And then we're just going to, no politics, by the way, just to be very clear. It's not something that's going to be, they discuss politics. And I was with Judge Dei last night, and I said to him, I'm bringing you in as a patron and Ihsan, also of the Omar Khayyám Club. And hopefully Maki will join us as a patron. And it's really a fun thing, to be honest. It's really to celebrate excellence, whether you're from the very poor, the scientist, the writer, whatever. So just as to give you a bit of a background. But I thought how appropriate to launch the Omar Khayyám Club with the book by Dr. Mandela 10 years after Madiba or Mr. Mandela has left us, which is on the 5th of December, was 10 years ago. So what a great way to launch the club. And I know those of you that will attend the club by invitation, not everyone will get a chance to come every month because we'll rotate it. It's going to be one of the best things you're ever going to be part of, because we're going to really select the people that have done extraordinary things in the country. But that's enough about the club. Let's get back to why we're here today. Dr. Makaziwe Mandela is an amazing woman. She's an extraordinary woman. And I'm not going to pain you with her CV. You can Google all of that. But I know her as a very dear friend. And I was privileged to know her dad very well. And of course, she lived with her dad and without her dad for a long period of time. And there are many people in this country that, I'm going to say it as simply as I can, try to claim the mantle of Nelson Mandela in whatever way. To my mind, it's my personal opinion, the only person right now that can claim that mantle is Dr. Makaziwe Mandela, the eldest daughter of Nelson Mandela. The only one who stands up for what he believes, the only one who's critical in many respects, sometimes privately, because what she says carries a lot of weight, especially at this point in time in this country where, a lot has gone wrong. And I know her, and I know that she's one of the most progressive people in the world and really carries the ideals of, Tata Mandela, of Madiba forward in a very meaningful way. I think she's one of the few people that genuinely carries it forward. And she cares a lot, and I think it hurts her to see what has happened today in South Africa after everything her father had sacrificed for, had stood for, the ideals and all of those things. But as she believes, and as I believe, we will overcome this aberration that exists in our country today. And we will overcome it, I'm quite confident, in time. And will restore our country to the good values that her dad, believed in, and many others, all of those who had sacrificed, who had been imprisoned, tortured, many who have been killed, and all they really wanted was social justice and democracy and freedom for our people, and a better life for our people. I think that was the big thing. So it has been a bit of a difficult journey getting there in South Africa the last, almost 30 years. And I think we've gone wayward in almost every respect. We have great struggle icons sitting here in front of us, from Dr. Busak, Siraj, Musa, and others. And they've been part of this struggle. And I know it pains them to see there's so much poverty, so much inequality, and so many things have gone wrong in our country today. But, I'm confident that we will ultimately get back to the country that we can be. I know that we have many of our editors here from Cape Town. Wonderful to see them all. But as I said at the World Media Summit in China about 10 days ago, the mantle of the world's future rests on you, the journalists and the editors of the world, but especially so in our group. We're the biggest and remain the largest media group in this country, and we can carry forward, even though it's very difficult for us, because they make it very difficult for us, deliberately so. We can carry forward through the 8 million people that read our newspapers and 20 newspapers, our online platforms every day. We can carry forward the ideals of Nelson Mandela. We can carry forward the ideals of all of those that have struggled to get us here today. So I think you have a great responsibility. I'm speaking now to our editors. You have a great responsibility to make sure that we get this country right. Don't hesitate to expose the nonsense that occurs in the name of others. Continue to do what is right. Continue to give voice to the voiceless and to progressive people in this country. And you and I know, because we've done that for the last 10 years, the battle against ourselves has been ferocious. But I always get reminded by Sis Maki, Dr. Mandela, that, her dad and others went through something similar. To bring about change, it's not easy, and you always become the target, and sometimes you pay a heavy price for that. And so she is very inspirational in keeping someone like me going, keeping me, constantly believing that it's possible, no matter the obstacles, when we expose those that are in power, that are mismanaging the country, quite frankly, looting the country, that we continue to expose them, so, without fear or favor, no matter what they will throw at us. And I really want to say to our editors, well done. You're not afraid, although you don't often get the crap I do, but you're not afraid to actually, the other day, Adri Senekal, put out an article against one of the most senior ministers in Ramaphosa's cabinet, a hard-hitting article. And of course, within the minutes of that article being out there, the entire bots and trolls were on my feed, attacking me as if I'd written the article. And it was crazy, actually. But well done, Adri. I don't mind that they attack me. I think the truth must be told. And I applaud people like you and the other editors and journalists in our group that continue to speak truth to power, because that's the only way we are going to save our country. And that responsibility to save our country rests with all of us. And we must not be afraid. No matter how powerful those in power are, we must continue to do the right thing and save this country. And we will. We will. It's just a matter of time. We will save our country. But enough of that. This is a celebratory event. This is for Dr. Makaziwe Mandela to talk to us in conversation. So the format it's going to take, I'm going to ask Dr. Mandela to just come and say a few words, a little bit about whatever she wants to say, because it's very casual, not very formal. Then after that, I will ask her a few questions, and then I will leave it to you to ask her questions. And some of you knew Madiba very well as well, to come and say a few words yourself. It's very open, very casual. I hope you don't mind that it's so casual, but it is that time of the year as well where you don't want too much formality. So with that, I must thank Dr. Mandela, first of all, for having come all the way from New York. And as I said, landed last night in Johannesburg, flew here early this morning to Cape Town, to be with us here today. And that's a very precious thing that we very, very much appreciate. So with that, Dr. Mandela, this is Maki, I'm going to ask you to say a few words.
Iqbal, thank you very much for the opportunity that you've given me to come here to Cape Town. And I want to apologize. I think my voice is fading away again. I think that what I want to talk about is the reasons why I decided to write this book. And people always think that I wrote this book to coincide with the fact that it's the 10th year anniversary of my dad. I didn't write this book with that in thought. This book has been in the making for just before COVID. And I am not a writer by profession. For me, it was a joy to write this book, but it also was a challenge. I don't think if I'm asked to do it again, I will do it. But I wrote this book mainly for 3 reasons. One was actually to locate my dad in a specific time, location, and as my dad said, not a person who fell from heaven and became this icon, this freedom fighter and this icon. Secondly, I wrote this book to basically clarify that my dad has always been a Xhosa boy, a country boy, a man who was shaped by the values, by the customs and the traditions of his ancestors. And he carried that throughout his life. It was important for Dada to do that because that's where his identity as Madiba came from. And also the other thing that I wanted to write this book was actually to have our voice as his progeny had through this book. There are many books that have been written by Dada, but none of us has been actually written of Mandela the man, a son, a father, an uncle, a brother, a grandson, a grandfather. And so that's why I wanted to write this book, but also to reclaim what I believe is ours, and that is basically the Mandela name. The Mandela name doesn't come from Nelson himself. Mandela was my great-grandfather, whose name was Mandela. And that's where we actually get this issue of what we call the House of Mandela. But also what has been missing in many books is to actually emphasize the fact that Dada did not achieve the freedom of South Africa, the dismantling of apartheid alone. He was always surrounded by a lot of colleagues, some of them here today. And this book is not to say, Mandela is a single icon. This book is to say, without the support of other friends, collaborators, when Dada came to Johannesburg, that's the first time that Dada was truly exposed, literally, to what apartheid was doing to Black people. While Dada was growing up in the Transkei, Dada was in a protected environment. He was a ward of the regent, and so much was not. He heard about what the colonialists did when they came to South Africa, but he had never experienced it. when he escaped from Transkei to come to Johannesburg and worked as a security guard in one of the gold mines, and he lived in Alexander. He saw the horrible conditions of Black African people in this country. And I think, and through the mentorship, because it was Walter Sisulu who identified him, encouraged him to join the African National Congress and mentored him throughout his life. And also, I think the important thing is to show the prominent role that Africa played in our liberation struggle. Because when Dada left this country illegally, he went to most of the African countries to seek help. It was in Ethiopia that Emperor Haile Selassie actually helped him with a passport for him to be able to travel to other African countries and even to the UK. And so that is captured very well in this book, because often it would seem that it is the Western countries only who supported us in the fight of apartheid. Africa sacrificed a lot in terms of getting us to where we are today. And basically also to thank those people in UK, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Europe, who were part of the anti-apartheid movement, who actually supported us. And the message that I want people to get out of this book is that nothing is achieved by a single individual alone. It is through collaboration, through unity, that we achieve what is impossible. And for me, it is important that through dialogue, and I'm glad you are starting the Omar Khayyám Club, through dialogue, we can talk to each other and not pass each other. Because these days you find that there is so much of canceling other people when you don't agree with their views. And that's not what Madiba was. Madiba comes from a culture where you listen to the views of other people, even if you disagree with them, even if you hate them internally, but you give them the chance to express their views. And I think we are quickly losing that in this country, but I hope that by people immersing themselves again in what Madiba stood for, they can take those principles into the future, which were not just Madiba's principles, but they are principles embedded in the concept of Ubuntu, which we all share as children of Africa. Thank you.
All right, so that was short, sweet, but highly impactful. I'm sure you agree with me. So my style is always to surprise people. And I'm going to call upon Dr. Alan Busak, just to come and say a few words. Completely unprepared, you can see the shock on his face. But knowing Dr. Busak, he will not be lost for words, even if it's just a few words, because he knew Madiba as well. Yeah. Okay, just a few words.
Thank you very much for this surprise. It's good to be with you this morning. Sis Markey, yesterday, the 13th, it is exactly 10 years ago that I was asked to preach at the memorial service for Madiba in the National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. The title of that sermon was taken from a song in the Black church that had the title, "It Ain't Over Until God Says It's Over." And so I talked to the people there about our feelings for Madiba. I talked about the loss. I talked about the mourning. But I also remembered how there were so many people who were dancing in the streets, celebrating his life and his legacy. And so I was saying to them, even though the man is no longer with us, the way he lived, what he left for us will remain. And there are people who were saying at the time, oh, it's all over for South Africa now. And I was saying, no, that's not true, because it ain't over until God says it is done. And so if I look, thinking back at your words, Dr. Sure, if I look at where our country is today, I meet people every day who are in such despair because they really do think now it is really all over. There is really nothing left for us. But the legacy of Madiba does not lie in the statutes that they made of him, does not lie in his face on every single rand note, does not lie in the exploitation of his name whenever the government is in trouble and they think that Madiba magic will somehow save the day. That's not the legacy. The legacy lies in the truth that you represent, in the truth that our people still hold in their hearts, in the determination that freedom will be real, and in our commitment that we will not stop until our children have a safe future. That is Madiba for me. And so, even as we look at the difficulty today, I keep on saying it ain't over. It ain't over until God says it's done. And God will not say it's done until we give up. And we will never give up. Thank you for this gift.
Now, God forbid I'd given Alan time to prepare. He would have had all of us rocking away here. Alan is an inspiration. And he knows he lived and was with Madiba after release. And of course, you know, everybody knows that. And Alan, all I can say, I hope you go public to rescue this country. I hope so. Leaders like you are needed now more than ever. Now more than ever. And I really hope that you carry that mantle forward politically. I know you're a man of God, a man of the cloth, as they say. But right now we need good people, good leaders, those that have been touched by Madiba in a genuine way to lead this country forward and take the opportunity that our democracy allows us as it will be in the 2024 elections next year. And we must take that opportunity very seriously. Because we have one moment, as Omar Khayyám says, as you'll see, to change things. And we have to grab that moment before it's too late. And so there's a great, I know that you've been through a lot, but I hope that you're going to be part of an initiative to lead change in using our democracy that people have fought for. So with that, thanks, Alan. That was really incredible, what you just said. So just another quick, I want to welcome Consul General from Spain, as well as here, Jesus Silva. Welcome. Please come and sit in front. Are you comfortable there? Thank you. And Siraj, can I impromptu you for a few words? If I may, Judge Siraj Desai. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I thought I was going to miss this opportunity to speak on this occasion. I have two stories to tell about our great icon. The one story is a very personal and family one. My late wife, as you all know, was a very attractive woman. And we sat at a dinner with President Mandela, and he was giving her lots of attention. And then she produced the menu, and she made him sign in great detail a message to my son. And he did exactly what she said. He wrote the words as she had uttered them, and he signed it, Nelson Mandela. So I asked my wife, how did you manage that? I discovered, my wife was a trained nurse. She discovered that the president was short of hearing. So she knew that if we look straight at his face, at his lips, then he'll understand what you're saying. And she did exactly that. So we have this beautiful letter written by the president to my baby son, then baby son, on that occasion. You see, my roots, Doctor, are not that of the president, but that of his late wife, Winnie Mandela. I grew up in the unity movement. So my earliest recollection of what I was trained politically was that of the president bashing up our meetings which he did. It's the only occasion where we are known the president to have break-up meetings when the unity movement had meetings in Gauteng. But that's half the story, because his views are moderated over the years because of his constant contact with the Madikizela family, which was the first proud left-wing family in this country, which shaped the political landscape. I knew many of them because at one stage I was the organizer for the unity movement, and I went all over the Transkei, meeting some of the finest sons of this country and daughters. But I think eventually, or all the time, the president harbored a great deal of respect for us. I mean, Dala, when he joined the ANC, was not from the ANC, but he was Mandela's lawyer before he became a member of the UDF and the ANC. So he had a great deal of respect for us. But what is not told in history is how this respect for conflicting ideas from a progressive view were reflected in the work which Mandela did. I was fortunate that just before I became a judge, I received a call from the ANC and said, look here, we've got so many seats in Parliament, and the president wants to allocate one seat to the unity movement, and he wants Dick Dudley to join us in Parliament. So it was my mission then on behalf of the president of the country, my mission on behalf of President Mandela, to convince Dick Dudley to join a comprehensively unity government in this country. I went to Dick, and who I'd worked for many years, but I'd already left the unity movement at that stage. But I went to Dick and I told him what the president had said. He smiled very happily, but he said, thanks, but no thanks. Our politics are too divergent for me to join the ANC at this stage. He did not meet the historic moment at that time which was offered to him. I thought so. I think he failed in that respect. And I think President Mandela was the greater man because he envisaged the unity of the left of the political spectrum in this country and was prepared to extend it to others as well. I think that's reflected throughout his politics, the attempt to broadly embrace everybody. At that moment, it may be wrong today, but it's entirely correct in 1994, 1995, to draw in the vast majority of people, progressive people, into a broader spectrum of political opposition. In the years, despite my own upbringing and political training in political theory, I eventually, I joined the ANC and participated in its formations. I grew with a great deal of respect for the president. I'm privileged to meet you, Dr. Makaziwe. It's the second occasion that we meet. I meet other members of your family. It's been a privilege to go through this book. And it's a privilege simply to browse through the life. We call him an icon, but it's so much the part of our lives for those of us who grew up in France in 1994 and before. Thank you very much for giving us this book and for this opportunity to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judge Desai. You know, you're right that that was a moment that Richard Dudley had passed. Like you, I also came from the unity movement background. In fact, Dudley was my mentor because I was the chairman of the SRC at Livingston, where Dudley was the vice principal, as you know, over the years. So all of us have come from that background into the ANC ultimately. And it was a moment that I think he should have taken because he was a great intellectual and he could have contributed immensely to him and people like Neville Alexander could have contributed immensely towards the education system of this country. But now we'll go to the light-hearted question and sort of discussion with Dr. Mandela. And I'm going to ask just a few questions, and then anyone sitting here, you're welcome to ask questions. So I will kick off with an easy question. what part of the book would you say people should not miss? I know it's a very thick book, but what is great meaning to you in this book?
I think the afterword, written by my daughter, is very powerful. People who want to understand the issue about the commercialization of Nelson Mandela should start with that before they read the book. But I think that the first chapter that actually frames data in terms of the context of the Tembu people and who he was, the pictures of his sisters and his mother is also a very important chapter for me. The family chapter, where I talk about the family, and because you can see also the trauma of a father who is incarcerated for life and going through an experience of losing a mother, children, while you are in jail and not permitted to go to their funerals was a very traumatic experience for Tata. So it was not an easy journey for Tata. And I think that for me, writing this book, I began to see my father in a different light. A man who was a human being, who had feelings, who was not always sure-footed in terms of the choices that he had made. I think he had a lot of regrets, especially about his mother, because he was very close to his mother. Tata was a mama's boy, and he had set himself up that when he became a lawyer, he would really get his mother and his sisters out of poverty, and he didn't fulfill those dreams. He only fulfilled them, I think, after he was released from jail, but by that time, his mother had passed away.
You kind of answered my follow-up question, but I'm going to ask it again because did you feel differently about your father after you did the book?
Yeah, I think because I'm a mother, I have children, I have grandchildren, I understood that from a different viewpoint, because I was always angry and bitter at my father, that we had a father who was there, but really not there for us, because he was involved in the struggle. I remember we had a conversation one day with my late brother, Mahatu, and I was just complaining bitterly that we had hoped that when Dada was released, he would have time for us, but he didn't have time. And Khatu said to me, forget that, because Dada is married into politics. And basically, I had to accept that.
Madiba was away from you for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
What were the kind of things you felt during that period?
Look, what do you do? When Dada was sentenced to life in prison, I was in boarding school in Swaziland, because we were whisked to boarding school. I was between the age of 6 and 7 when I went to boarding school. I didn't see Dada for a long time because Dada went underground and was staying with different friends and colleagues, and then ended up in Lily's Leaf. And we would see him occasionally when we would go there with Mamwin. But when I heard that Dada had said that he's prepared to die for the struggle, I was very angry with it, because how could he be prepared to die? What about his children? And I always said to my mom, if Dada wanted to commit himself to the struggle, then why did he make a choice to have children, as if it was an easy choice? But I understood that it was not an easy choice for him. He didn't choose the struggle. It was something that he had to do. It is said I'm more stubborn than my dad. Meg Maharaj says that I'm more stubborn than my dad. And because I would challenge Dada on a number of issues, me and Dada didn't get on very well because the rest of the family sort of bowed and curtsied to Dada. But I would question some of the decisions that he's making. And he respected that to a certain extent, but Dada was also a very patriarchal person, and very strict, a disciplinarian who expected his children to behave in a certain way. For example, when we are at home, especially in Kunu, and he would come down to the dining room first and we were not there and he came late, he would give us a dressing down. He shouldn't be waiting for us, we should be waiting for him. That was the type of person that Tata was.
My last question.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think he would feel about South Africa right now?
I think Tata would be very disappointed at where South Africa is today. Yes, he knew that there were challenges and that if you climb one hill, you find that when you're at the top of that hill, there are many more hills to climb. But I don't think Tata expected that we would take so many steps backward. And that basically we would have a leadership that was not or had forgotten why they were in power and not care about the ordinary man in the street. Yes, I think Tata would be the first one to admit that the ANC was not a perfect entity during that time. But I think Tata and his colleagues, Walter, Meg Maharaj, Govan Begi, I think they were the type of leaders who were very sensitive to what was happening on the ground and were continually in discussions amongst themselves how they improve the conditions of the poor. I think, for me, Iqbal, the greatest mistake I think Tata and his colleagues made was not really to put in place an effective training mechanism for the next leadership. And so today you hear people say, Tata chose Cyril Ramaphosa. And I laugh because Tata never chose Cyril. Tata said to everybody, to Tokyo, to anybody, when they did something that Tata approved, and he would say, you are presidential material. And so people take that Tata chose. No, it's not true. Anybody who would show leadership qualities, respect for other people, who was courageous, who was tolerant of other people's views, Tata would actually say, you have leadership qualities to lead. But I think it is a shame that today we are living in a country where we have rolling blackouts, load shedding. I lived in Kenya. During my years in Kenya, I never experienced a single moment of load shedding. And these are issues that are very easy to solve, but they become insurmountable problems. And I think not just Tata, Walter, Govan Begi, I think they would be disappointed in looking at South Africa today. But our problem is that we inherited a system in which you had a corporate sector that had full competence and skill and financial resources, and you have a government that doesn't have the competencies, the skills, at times uneducated, who are filling positions, and they really don't understand what they are doing in their own positions.
Thanks, Sis Maki. That's powerful.
There's a poem I'm going to read that I love very much in this book because it actually frames who we are as Mandelas. It's from Mazisi Kunene. It says, in praise of the ancestors, even now the forefathers still live. They are not overcome by the power of the whirlwind. The day that sealed their eyes, that did not conquer them. Even the tall boulder that stands over them casts only a humble shadow over their resting place. They are the great voice that carries the epics. The ancestors have come to listen to our songs. Overjoyed, they shake their hands in ecstasy. With us, they celebrate their eternal life. They climb the mountain with their children to put the symbol of the ancient stone on his forehead. We honor those who gave birth to us. With them, we watch the spectacle of the moving mist. They have opened their sacred book to sing with us. They are the mystery that envelops our dream. They are the power that shall unite us. They are the strange truths of the earth. They came from the womb of the universe. Restless they are, like a path of dreams, like a forest sheltering the neighboring race of animals. Yes, the deep eye of the universe is in our chest. With it, we stare at the centers of the sky. We sing the anthems that celebrate the great eras. For indeed, life does not begin with us. And that captures the essence of why I wrote this book, is that life does not begin with us, this progeny. Life predates us, and we have to honor our ancestors as much as we have to understand our own history. Because if we do not, we can't understand the present and the future.
Thank you for that, Sis Maki. Thank you for reminding me that there was a book section to be read as well. Okay, with that, I open the floor.
Tariq Khayyám, independent media, Western Cape editor. Good morning, everyone. Congratulations, Dr. Mandela. Dr. Mandela, on the launch of your book. I've got a question. I hope it's not too serious for the occasion. But the launch of the book comes at a very critical time in the history of our nation. It also comes just a few days before Christmas, and I'm sure it'll make for a fabulous Christmas gift. But the book comes at a time that's when we celebrate 30 years of our democracy. And 2024 will also be when South Africa goes out to vote in a very critical election. Is there significance to the timing of the launch of the book? Does the book have a message for South Africa at this critical time? Thanks and congratulations.
As I've said previously, the book was not intended really to be published at this point in time. But I think it is 10 years since my father passed. And I think that it is important to remind people what my father stood for. My father was chosen to be a symbol of the liberation struggle. And I think that the important learn is that Tata was authentic to himself in terms of what he believed in. And I think in an era where we face challenges and opposing voice, what is deemed to be opposing voice is silence. We should refuse to participate in the silencing of different voices. I think my father and his colleagues refused to participate. But refusing to participate means it's a sacrifice. You have to take risk, and it takes courage to be able to stand up for what you believe. And I think we have an example with Iqbal here. He has been literally persecuted in every way, followed by he has never given up. He has stood for what he believes. And I think my father said, if the ANC does to you what apartheid did to you, you have every right to boot it out of power. And so we can't keep on electing people who are not advancing the cause of freedom and social justice. We have to choose differently. But the question is, where is a leader that will take us to that future? Is it Dr. Alan Busak? Maybe he should stand up. You can't say no. I mean, by the time Tata got out of jail, he was in his 60s. Yes, he decided to serve one term because he knew that he couldn't serve 2 terms. But contributed to this country to advance the cause of freedom. And I think we need to be reminded. There's nobody who's reminding us where we come from, how apartheid has manifested itself psychologically, socio-economically in this country, and that we are actually still under apartheid, though we claim to be free politically and legally. And the major issue is that when the ANC negotiated, they left the economy in the hands of those who control the economic purse strings. And that is a continuation. And as Kwame Nkrumah has said, political freedom without economic freedom is a hollow freedom, is a hollow dream. And we are experiencing it today. If we don't control somehow the purse strings, I think we are going to have a difficult future in front of us. So something has to fundamentally change in this country. And I think there's a chapter here where I talk about the values of Nelson Mandela. And I think it's important that people read it to actually re-energize themselves. Because it will need all of us participating, not just Iqbal. And I know that as journalists, you are trying in independent news, but all of us, not just the journalists, all of us as citizens of this country, if you want to see a country where social justice and equity prevails, then we all have to do our little part. We don't need to be politicians, to be political members. In our own individual homes, we can start thinking about what acts of kindness are we going to commit to help another person who's less privileged than us. Thank you.
Hi, hello. I'm Gina Brown. I work in Survey's office for multilaterals and
Can you
international.
speak up so I don't hear?
And first of all, thank you so much for coming out today. Really looking forward to reading the book. And second, it's more of a personal question. Thank you for sharing with us your experience in the story of where you could see firsthand how it's a bit disheartening to have a parent who is this world leader and gives so much to others. But then you might question and think, well, was it all worth it? Because we never got to have a father, and now our country is struggling anyway, and we're in the same position. But clearly, you haven't given up. You still care. So I wanted to know 2 things. First, what is the reason that you tell yourself that makes you realize it's still worth it to care on a macro scale? And the second is, for someone who you think would be, or who would want to be or aspire to be a world leader or even a nation's leader, what advice would you give them to how to balance, to what extent do they sacrifice themselves for the country in the macro or balance themselves for a personal life? Thank you.
I don't think that we can afford to give up or let go. I think for me personally, I've said myself that I can never fit in my father's shoes. They're too big for me to fit in. There are things I even question myself today. I don't think that I would easily forgive people who put me in jail and separated me from my family, but my father was able to forgive, you know. And he says that it takes courage to forgive. And yes, it does take courage and bravery to forgive another person. But I think for me, it is important that I am not religious in any shape or form, but I'm very, very spiritual. I believe in a higher power. And I believe Dr. Alan Busak talked about God. I believe in a God. Whether you call it divine matrix, whatever name you give the higher power, I believe there's a higher power. And I believe if we talk to him, that he gives us the power to persevere and to thrive. And I don't think that we should lose hope as South Africans. If America is said to be still an experiment after 400 years, then we have very short time in which we can say we are giving up. The South Africa of today is not the same as the South Africa of even the 50s or the 60s. It's a different South Africa. We need to build on that. And I think often enough, we are looking for leaders to give us the way. But I like to give people an example over the pandemic, the crisis of the pandemic that we went through. Leaders came out spontaneously in communities. People helped their neighbors who were suffering. They went out shopping for older people. These acts of kindness, these acts of nurturing and caring of Ubuntu are within us, but we seem to doubt ourselves. Everybody here is a leader, and I think everybody here has the Madiba qualities. We just need to sit down and tap and make a choice. Tata made a choice to live a particular life. If you make the choice, you have to examine all the circumstances and all the challenges you are going to face and still stay on the road or the journey that you have made a choice. It's all about choice. We have to sacrifice. And as I've said, you don't need to be a Mandela or a Gandhi, a leader. But in your own community, in your own neighborhood, I think it starts there. We've got to make change. It actually starts in our homes. What do we watch? What are the conversations we're having at home with our families? And it goes to the neighborhood and community. That's where it starts.
Thank you, Dr. Mandela. You've mentioned the book about the ethos of Madiba, his ancestors, the culture, the values that have been instilled in him. Given all of that, do you see, in your opinion, would Madiba have voted for this ANC?
Well, let's take Madiba at his word. He said when he gets to heaven, the first thing that he'll look for is a branch of the ANC and join the ANC. Tata was severely criticized on the AIDS issue. Severely criticized. I think he came out of one meeting and he was in tears, the way that he was treated. But he was still committed to the ANC. Tata was maybe he was naive or an idealist, that you could correct things from the inside. And you would have criticized the ANC of today. About voting, I don't think that Tata would step out of the ANC. That's how they were disciplined. They believed that if something was wrong within the ANC, it was talked about within the ANC. It did not spill out. When they went into the public, they would discuss these issues and agree to disagree. But when they went out to the public, they spoke with one voice and supported each other. There were no divisions that you see in the ANC today. And I think that that's how principle they were as a cohort. But I doubt very much that he would vote for any other party except the ANC, but he would truly not what the ANC promises, that they would correct themselves and do not. He would actually seek for a correction of the ANC from within. From within.
I always phrase things, would he vote for the ANC of Ramaphosa? Hey? Yeah, I know there's a furious debate within the ANC at the moment whether, the ANC belongs to Ramaphosa or not. And I know that a lot of people are reflecting on that important point. But I think, with that, we come to the closure of the formal part. I do want to say that, Dr. Mandela has left us with a lot to think about in terms of what she said. Her words of wisdom carry great reflection, carries great pain. But she also gave us the glimmer of hope to say that it is possible to bring about this change that we are all looking for. Mandela was a non-racialist. He was someone that was believing that South Africa belongs to all who live in it. And what defined Mandela and defined those that have followed his generation, including Dr. Mandela, is that it's the values that count. It's the values that define us, not our race, not our religion, not our color, not our stature, not our wealth, not our academic credentials. It is the values that count. And if we can get back to those values again, then we're going to become a great country. We have such amazing potential to realize Madiba's dream. And we are so lucky and privileged and gifted to have Sismaki, Dr. Mandela, here with us. Because she can inspire us to actually realize that dream. Because if there's anyone that knew her father, and it's not time that makes you know your father, that bond between the father and the child is something which nobody can ever take away. And she knew her father, and she knew what her father wanted. And so, Sismaki, in a way, your book, I know it wasn't timed to come out right now, but your book is a great inspiration to us. It's a truly, truly wonderful gift to all of us, to our nation, to our people, and the world. At a time when the world needs peace more than ever before. The time when the world needs the peace of Nelson Mandela, the peace of what he stood for, the courageousness with which he took on topics which nobody wanted to take on. And I think the message and the inspiration that someone like myself gets is that we will not be silenced. Too many people sacrificed, too many people fought, too many people wanted peace, justice, democracy, equality, freedom, and we're not going to be silenced. We're just not going to be silenced. And we cannot be silenced, because if we silence, we are more complicit in what is going on than others. If we're knowledgeable about what is going on and we remain silent, we are more complicit. if we have the resources, the knowledge, the ability to oppose this injustice, what's happening in the country today, what's happening in the world today, and we're silent, then we are truly complicit. We have a greater responsibility to speak out and to carry that mantle of Madiba forward. But we are lucky that in our midst we have great people of great wisdom, some of whom have spoken here today. Dr. Busak, thank you for your words. At no notice. Judge Dei, thanks to you as well. And I want to thank Dr. Mandela, for her words and her hope that she's given all of us. So I invite you to do two things. Thank you as well for coming. And also want to take the opportunity to wish you all wonderful, wonderful festive season, and just be safe and be happy. But I want to invite you to partake in the refreshments at the back, and then Dr. Mandela will go across to the table, and then one at a time, we'll have the book. She'll autograph the book for you. Thank you. Okay.